So here's the question. When is it over? I had a drink, not too much, I paced myself, with a good friend of mine, Hermann Ooster. He has a new book out. He wanted to show me his book. He's a poet, and he's a really interesting guy, one of these typical German kind of Berlin kind of guys. You can be Germans love artisanship. They call it Handwerker, a guy who works with his hands. So it's the carpenters, it's the these guys, and they believe it's a kind of art, which it is, of course. And so they have a certain more of a way of honoring the Handwerker, the artisan, than we do in the English language world. But he is a Steinmetz, a stone carver. He spent most of his life carving names on gravestones. That's what stone carvers basically do most of the time. So that was his life. And then and he's older now, and he's retired from that, but he's doing other things. He's still working, and he had some health problems last year, and it was a bad year for him, and he wanted to talk to me about that. But he finally, after several years of not coming out with a new book, he finally came out with a new book, which is called Positionslichter, Position Lights, or Positional Lights. And he's a great poet, and you see that often in Germany, where you have this kind of the Handwerker Literat, the Handwerker poet, the Handwerker writer, the Handwerker who reads Marx and Heidegger and Kant and whatever, and Michel de Montaigne. We talked about Michel de Montaigne tonight, which was very nice, and things like that. And you find that a lot in Germany. And for me, he's kind of the exemplar of that kind of German life, of that kind of German personality, which is something I really like about Germany. There's things you can hate about Germany just as much, just like any other country in the world. It's just a typical normal country, with its ups and downs and its good sides and bad sides. But one of the things that I really love about him is this kind of Handwerker poet, and Hermann Jan Ooster. His name is, there's some Dutch blood in him, and he comes from the Rhine area. He talks a lot about the Rhine Catholics, the superior, in the race of Germans, the superior race of Germans are the Rhine Catholics. If he talks, it's okay. So we have this nice conversation, and he tells me about the new book, and we talk about literature and poetry and all that stuff, and it's really nice. He's a great guy, and if you're interested in the book, buy the book. I keep holding the book up because, see, he to publish his books, he used to publish his poetry with other publishers, small publishers. These are, this is not a big, it's not T.S. Eliot here. We're talking about small publishers who publish poetry. And he got to know more and more writers who wrote on a kind of a level where they could not get into the big publishers. And so he founded his own publishing company, which is called Queequeg, which is, of course, Melville, right? The harpoonist in Moby Dick. And he published quite a number of young and older writers who were kind of not enough in the mainstream to get into the big publishing houses. And he does it well. And he does it with a great love of this writing and of language, and his own poetry reflects this. He's written several books about of poetry, most of which has been published in other publishing houses. And this is the first time he's published his own poetry in his own publishing house. So in a little, we would call it today self-publishing, but of course he's an old school guy, and so he doesn't call it self-publishing, but it basically is. So I've read some of the poems, and I will be reading some of the poems in German. Maybe I can translate them to English in videos, in videos on TikTok or YouTube or whatever in the next couple of weeks. And they're really nice poems. He's a great master of language, of the German language, of course. And we talked, and every time we meet, he goes on and about a book I wrote, which is his favorite book he loves the most. He says it's a great book. I think he loves two books of mine. The first book I wrote, called The Nibelungenreise, which is the German title. The English title, if there were English edition, would be Driving Through the Dark Ages. It's about my year-long trip in a van through Germany in the search of the Middle Ages. Okay, so he loved that, and then he various other books that he thought were good, and he disagreed with it or agreed with it, whatever. And then the last book I wrote, or the last real. No, it wasn't the last book I wrote. It was whatever. One of the recent books I wrote, which I could not find a publishing house for, which I assumed I would not be able to, because it's such a small kind of book, is about Mormonism. And it's about growing up in Mormonism, and it's about the theory of Mormonism, the theology of Mormonism, and it's about leaving the Mormon church, and it's about the search for God and relationship to God. And it's called Losing My Religion, and it's a little personal book, which I made a half-hearted attempt to find a publisher for in German and in English. Did not find one, of course. Maybe I would have found one if I'd searched more, but I doubt it. I don't think so. There's no publisher for this kind of book. It's a book. It's a Losing My Religion. It's not, it's not. If you talk about Mormonism, you either have to praise Mormonism, and then your book buyers are Mormons, or you have to hate and disparage Mormonism. It's a cult. It's evil. It's bullshit. Jesus Christ. And then your audience, the book buyers, are evangelical Christians who hate Mormonism and feel threatened by Mormonism for some reason. But I'm neither here nor there. I really admire the church for its theology. It's a brilliant, highly democratic, highly American church. It is, I believe, the best thing that ever has happened to Christianity. It's the most modern form of Christianity, and I really love it. At the same time, I could not stay in it. It stunted me. It damaged me in many ways, and in a way, in some ways, I'm still recovering from it and trying to find myself outside of the church. And so that's what the book is about. Okay, so enough about the book. But he loves that book, and but every time he says, he goes on and on about how great a book this is, and he gives it to his friends, and his friends love it, and it's so depressing because it's I cannot get it into the mainstream. Of course, it's probably my best book. Well, maybe, who knows? I don't know. It could be my best book, but it's doomed to only sell 300. I probably sold 300 copies so far, something like that. It's doomed to have a really tiny audience. That's the way it is. That's never going to change. And so if someone says, I love this book, it's really depressing, actually, because I wish the world would see the book, of course. And so as we talked, he's in my age, and so we're both old guys, We're old guys, which in German, if I were saying this in German, I would say we're old. Alte Säcke. Great German phrase. Old sacks is what it means. And of course, the word sack has kind of a sexual connotation. It's, the sack where you store your balls, right? That's what it means, right? So, but it's mainstreamy enough so that you can say it in public, and people will kind of, if you say, I'm just an old sack, Germans will say, It's kind of funny. It's self-disparaging, and it's cute, and there is this kind of weird sexual component to it. And okay, but so that's what I would say. So here we are, two old sacks, drinking beer, and whiskey, in our favorite bar, called Naumann Drei here in Schöneberg in Berlin, and he talked about his plans, the new books he's going to bring out, and the new books he's going to publish. Bring out is a German phrase, publish, and his writers that he's hoping to publish in his little publishing house, and he asked me about my plans, and a great depression came over me, because I wondered to myself, all the plans I have, all the things I still want to do with my life, and I really feel like I have yet to write the great book. That is my goal, to write a great book. But I'm 62 years old, and you don't write great books when you're 62 years old. It's over when you're 62 years old, and suddenly I was sure that it was just over, and then I'm just kidding myself that I can make anything more out of my life. My greatest achievements will have been, one or two of those books I've written, which people might remember. They're going out of print quickly. Losing My Religion sold only 300 copies or so. And that will be my legacy, which is no legacy at all. And the book I've yearned to write and striven for all my life, the great book, which I still don't know what it is, even though I have a whole list of books that I'm writing, simultaneously at the same time, and trying to publish in kind of a weird, kind of self-defeating, attempt to do everything at once, even though at the end of my life, I should probably concentrate on one last thing. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, of course. I'm 62 years old. I'm not 82 years old. The difference, 20 years, is quite a good time. So it's quite a long time. So I can still do this. So, but I was the depression just came on me, and it was just this black hole again in my life, which comes so often. And I came home, and I told Astrid about it. I knew it was a mistake to tell Astrid about it, and she yelled at me. And she said, you're always so depressed immediately. Why do you have 20 good years ahead of you? Why do you? And you're still writing. You're still full of ideas. What are you talking? What are you talking about? And so she gave me the what for, which was good. Which, thank you, Astrid. But there are people who kid themselves when they get 60 that they can still do something, and they can't. And I don't know whether I fall into that category or not. I just don't know. I can't. I won't know until I prove it. Until I prove that I'm not in that category. Until it's like Schrödinger's writer. Until the writer proves that he can write a great book, he can't write a great book, right? And there have been writers who have written great books after 60. There have been writers who started writing at 60 and started writing great books at 60. So it's possible. And then there was the cases like, Billy Wilder, who read an interview before he died, and he was, an old guy, and the interviewer asked him, what are you doing now? And he said, I'm still writing scripts. I have all these scripts ideas. I have great movie ideas. And he's still sitting down every day writing. And he also, and he probably had a great idea, but no one wanted to read his scripts. No one wanted to, it was done. It was over. And of course, he looked back on a classic career, on a great career, on a, true greatness. Billy Wilder, this was a great director / writer, so there's nothing to be depressed about, but his idea that he was still working was an illusion. And old sacks sometimes give themselves illusions and live in illusions until they die and cannot face up to the facts. And so I came home looking for the truth? Am I living an illusion? Or is there one great book still in me? Well, I guess that question is not answerable. I guess we'll have to see it. Schrödinger's writer. Until you write the great book, you haven't written the great book. Okay, anyway, folks, too many. It was one beer and one whiskey with Hermann Jan Ooster, and I will do some YouTube, TikTok recordings of some of these poems in the next couple of weeks. And to all of you, I wish you greatness and wonderful and a good attitude, and don't be depressed just because I'm sitting here, crying in my whiskey. Don't take me seriously. I'm full of bullshit. Go out there and do a good job and be great. And you can, the thing is, you can do it. And I'm telling you that, and I'm trying to tell myself that too. And I pledge to you and I pledge to me that I will make my best effort. Good night, everyone.